All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, co creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. If you had a chance to take a look at the promo that we had posted recently, you know that we have a terrific show as well as an impressive guest on tap for you guys. So without further ado, let us dive in. Today's said guest carries a variety of hats, which we, of course, will dive into. With that said, those said hats include being a technologist with a number of ventures, which include forming the audio video post production company Walt Tucker Productions, also co founding Seventh Level, an award winning CD-ROM game and educational software company, founding Think EXP. He is also the CEO of Ignited Network, an offshoot of his music accelerator organization known as Ignited Artists, and much, much more. If that weren't impressive enough, he just also so happens to be known as the saxophonist for the iconic bands of Pink Floyd, Supertramp, as well as Toto. It is my pleasure to welcome onto the show Mr. Scott Page. Scott, hello. Hold on, you have me muted.
You're too
There
kind,
you go.
my friend.
But yes, thank you. Appreciate having you on the show. Hope all is well. Just to dive right in get the ball rolling. In talking about those fields of interest that you had growing up,
Mhm.
that you saw yourself doing, whether it was music, whether it was being a businessman, or even from what I understand, a documentarian as well. How did that segue into uh, uh, architecture and design? That career path growing up to start.
Well, you mean it started out in architecture design? Yeah, I loved design and stuff when I was
Yes.
a kid. Again, my background comes. My father was a musician also, and also a serial entrepreneur. I think we talked a little bit about that. We had lighting businesses, boating business.
Yes.
We had a candy business. We had 26 donut shops one time. My dad had a saxophone mouthpiece business and a reed business, and there was also one of the guys he actually started amplified instruments, woodwind instruments. He took a hearing aid and basically put it on his clarinet, played it, reversed it, so it made the hearing aid was like a microphone, and plugged it into the amp and started amplified instruments. Went to the Vox instrument company, which was Thomas Oregon at the time, and talked them into starting a whole idea of making band instruments like guitars and stuff. And so got into that, and he was started the was one of the co-founders of the wah wah pedal, the famous
Of
guitar
course.
stuff. So I grew up and around a kind of an entrepreneurial musician family. My dad was there, and so. But at the time, my love was when I was growing up was I loved design and art and creating stuff like that. I was very handy with my hands, making stuff, models, building all the time. Had no real care to even be a musician really, but I did it because my father was a musician, and he kind of said, you should play. It'll be fun on the weekends. It's different. At least you'll be playing music. You won't have to work at a gas station right now. Maybe do that. So I kind of kept it up. But I got in this band with early days with Jeff Porcaro and David Page. For those that don't know, they were actually the original founders of Toto. But this was a kids' band called Merciful Soul Band. And I was the second trumpet player. I played trumpet. Wasn't even a saxophone player in those days, so I played trumpet. I got in that band, and we were starting to win all the battle of the bands. And I noticed there were a lot of girls in the front row, so I decided it's time to be a musician and drop the drafting skills because I was sitting there working at a company at the time called Audiodyne, drawing these exploded views and doing things like that. And I just feel, well, I think I like this music business better. So I flipped my career around and decided to go full-fledged music. Got into the music scene, practice, just started studying. Luckily, met a guy named Jerry Jumanville who basically got me into playing the saxophone. And from that point on, I just ate, drink, sleep music throughout, and flipped my career. I was a music copyist for a period
Composer,
of
right?
time. Yeah, I mean, those are the days that people might not know what music copying was. Well, no computers in those days. The composer would write on a big piece of score paper that would have the first trumpet on the first line, the second trumpet, the third trumpet, all the different instruments, the woodwinds, the bass, and then he would hand me the score, which was all of it, and then I'd write out all the individual parts, one for the trumpet player, one for the second trumpet player, one for the third, so they'd all have their individual parts. So I did that for a while, and that kept me going kept me eating it basically as I was studying music. From that thing, then it just started to happen. The first band I played with, it was kind of the biggest of them all was at that time was a band called Seals and Crofts. And Seals and Croft they had a couple massive hits. They Summer Breeze, and I can't think of the other tune right now, but they had a variety of hits through the years. So that was my first time into the music business. So I flipped my career. Now I'm a full-fledged musician, and there you go. That's how it got started.
Outstanding, outstanding. And I feel like that's a great segue in talking about that progression musically that you had with the instruments that you were playing, because it didn't begin with the saxophone. It was with the trumpet prior to that. So can you talk a bit about that story? Because I understand it was a faded gig that kind of played a role in making that change. So can you share about that story?
I'm not. I don't understand which story. Say that again. The question.
I was saying for that change that you had from a trumpet to a saxophone, I understand that there was a faded gig that played a
Oh
role
yeah.
in
So
you being
yeah.
able to make that change.
Yeah. I was at the time. I went to do a recording session for a band called Delaney and Bonnie. And Delaney and Bonnie, if you look them up, they were very well known band at the time, but really loved amongst the musicians. It was a real musicians band. It was that period of time when it was Leon Russell and all of the band, all those different bands that were happening at the time. So I ended up doing this recording session. Went in, played trumpet. This is where I met that guy Jerome Jumonville, who was the saxophone player, the tenor player. He was on the session with us that day. He was famous for. He was the saxophone player in Dr. John's band. He was a New Orleans guy. He played that solo on Rod Stewart's Tonight. Anyway, he was a famous saxophone player. So we hit it off, started chatting that day. So I went back to his pad and we started to go listen to some records, hang out and stuff after the session. And I sat there and he actually got the saxophone out and he played for like 3 hours. I'd never seen anybody love the saxophone so much. He played every Fathead Newman, Lockjaw Davis, Ben Webster, Ike Quebec, Charlie Parr. He just played solo after solo after solo. And I was just mesmerized with the saxophone. So I went out and bought a saxophone. The next day, he said he would teach me. So I ended up basically bought the saxophone, went back every day, pretty much for almost 6 months, and just studied saxophone with him. I was very thankful because he was a great saxophone player, but more importantly, his love for the instrument really connected me with it. And that's where I just became a fanatic about the saxophone, and that was the gig. So Delaney and Bonnie was the one. Jerome Jumonville was the guy, and rest in peace, brother Jerome. Thanking him for what he did for me and got me into the game for sure. I love saxophone for sure.
Indeed, indeed. And so I'm assuming outside of that faded, as I said, that faded moment, would you say it was anything else like intrinsically in playing that instrument that caused that transition as well? So like I know you've been quoted as saying that at one point, I guess playing the saxophone allowed you to have to bring less stuff along, I
Oh
suppose,
yeah,
when
yeah.
it
So
came to being able to travel.
well, during those days, I actually doubled a lot because I played trumpet still, and I was still playing it. I took up the flute, so I got the flute going, and that made
Got
it
it.
easier for me to get the saxophone going. I played oboe and English horn for a while. I even started studying some bassoon even back in the day, but I played all the woodwinds, obviously tenor, saxophone, flute, and some brass. So I played trumpet and some valve trombone. So I was like what they call it a doubleist. I would double on a lot of different things, and that actually helped me work, right? And then I also took up the guitar. So that was once I had the guitar and these instruments, that helped me get work because a lot of times they would say, "Hey, we can't hire the guy for just to play, a handful of saxophone songs,
Versatility.
sit around. But if you can play guitar
That
and then pick up
versatility
the
makes you
saxophone,
marketable.
and so I
Yeah.
basically followed in my father's footsteps because he was a doubler too. So he played oboe, English, he played 14 instruments, And you know, I grew up on that television show, The Lawrence Welk Show, which he was on for basically, you know, 15 years of my life back in the day. So yeah, that was it. The doubling helped me a lot at the time, and that's kind of where how that happened.
Outstanding, outstanding. So at the top, you were, commenting on some childhood friends of yours who, of course, would go on to do
Yeah.
Toto with Jeff and David. So in talking about that, can you share? I'm sure it was kind of surreal to kind of come full circle that way because you guys, from what I understand,
Yeah.
played music together as youngsters, but
Yeah.
they took off, and I know you
Yeah,
continued to pay your
I
dues
was
and
horrible.
made your way there. So,
I was the
can you
worst
talk
guy
a
in
bit
the
about that
band.
journey?
I was the worst guy in that kid band at the time, and there was no question. I could barely hold my own as a second trumpet player, but I got through. But I was studying. I started studying. So Jeff Picaro and Paige and those guys, they all started to take off. Jeff went off and started doing the Sonny and Cher show, which was a television show at the time, and they went and did Steely Dan and Boz Scaggs doing all these records, and Jeff became kind of one of the top guys. So in the back of my mind, I was always, man, I want to get good enough to play with those guys, right? And so I kept practicing, and finally I went and did the Seals and Croft gig, and I went out and got in Supertramp. I played with Supertramp, and then I finally got a call. I got a call from the band, from Jeff, and they wanted me to join the band. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it, man. Finally, I've gotten to a point where I could play good enough to be able to be, they're respecting me enough to be coming back in the band. So, man, when I got that call, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great. But I was scared to death. I wanted to learn all the music because they're, incredible musicians. Those guys are, some of the best musicians on more records than anybody out there, so well respected in the industry. So I practiced like for 2 weeks before the rehearsal started. I was up like 10, 12 hours a day studying the music, man, memorizing it, making sure I had everything really, really ready to roll. I go into rehearsal. First time, man, I remember staying up all night that night. I couldn't sleep. I was like, oh man, if I go and what if I screw up? And this is horrible. It's gonna be the worst thing of my life, right? All that panic setting in. But I really got home the music. And so I get into rehearsal, we're set up, we're getting ready to start the first tune, and Jeff Picaro, first thing he does, hands me a cowbell. And I'm like, he wants me to play cowbell. Didn't want me to play my instrument or play the song. He wants me to play cowbell. I'm like, oh, okay. So basically, he wanted to see if my time was any good because the groove is a very delicate thing and having good time. But luckily, I practiced wholehearted with metronomes, and I was a fanatic about time. It's a whole lifetime study. And I had one of the first Lynn drum machines, so it was all about the groove and things. So played the first tune, and luckily I passed. He was like, Paige, good job, put his arm around it. And the next thing you know, I'm playing the band. And then people would always ask me, what was the best thing about playing with Toto? And I would always say I got to play cowbell on 4 songs with Jeff Picaro during the show. So I had 4 songs that I could play, and he'd be right over there, and man, we would drill and bap, bap, we'd lock in so tight where I could basically feel my stick sinking into the cowbell, and at the same time Jeff's drum, he would be sinking into his snare drum, and we just align that groove so tight. Yeah, it was the best thing. I would always say it was better than sex, man, because it was just so good when you lock in that tight. So anyway, yeah, that was my story from getting back and playing with those guys. So I'm very thankful.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome stuff. So at the top, you were commenting on how your father was a serial entrepreneur, right?
Right.
And I wanted you to dive in, briefly into some of those companies that I, discussed at the top. I commented on Walt Tucker Productions as well
Yeah.
as a Seventh Level.
Yeah.
Could you share
Yep.
how those came to be? Because I feel like they came about. You had a good sense of when to bring those companies about because they were coming around in that time when those tools were needed.
Well, yeah, Walt Tucker was named after my 2 heroes, Walt Disney and
Walt
Preston
Disney,
Tucker,
yeah.
the car manufacturer. So I called it Walt Tucker. I love them because of their innovative, pioneering spirit at the time and what they were doing. So that was an audio video post production and merchandising business. I had a 10,000 square foot building, 5,000 square feet on top was all studio, a whole system I designed called Earmax that used zooming microphones and all these kind of MIDI based tripod systems and way of putting sound and picture together. And then downstairs I had a design and graphics merchandising company where did a lot of t-shirts and that kind of stuff. And my accounts were, Guitar Center, Yamaha, Con Musical Instrument Company. So I had all these companies we would create merchandise and stuff for. And so Guitar Center was one of them. And it's actually funny, if you look at the Guitar Center, if you look at the Rock Walk logo, it's the two hands like this. Well, one of those hands is mine. So I'm actually the logo.
What?
We
Wow,
designed
that's
the
awesome.
Guitar Center
Yeah,
logo for that.
yeah,
Nobody knows that. Very few people know that. And, funny enough, I put that on the moon, and we could talk about that in a little while too, because that's an interesting story.
absolutely.
But so I was around Guitar Center and all those stuff, and so I had a design business. So Walt Tucker was that business. From that, I ended up seeing CD-ROM start to come along, interactive entertainment. I was actually playing. I actually did my first CD-ROM in 1990. It was called Music Bites. It was with my good friend Ken Rose. It was basically music for computer users, because at that time people didn't have speakers and computers. You had to go buy a speaker upgrade kit and stuff that you would add to your computer, were multimedia. And so we created this sound thing called Music Bites, which you could use for PowerPoint presentations, music. So anyway, I got into that side of it, saw my future. And that's where Seventh Level was born. I was actually promoting our first CD-ROM in 1990 at Comdex in Las Vegas, which was the precursor to CES today. And myself, along with Jeff Baxter from the Doobie Brothers, you probably know him. We were promoting our Music Bites CD. He played on it together, and I looked across the room and I saw this thing on the screen. I said, "What is that?" And when we took our break, I walked across. It was a computer monitor, and there was a little like a little cartoon character kind of thing, and you could click on it and it would move. I said, "That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen." You could actually go click on it. And from that point, I became so engraved into the multimedia interactive, because I love the idea of having a computer, a set of speakers where I could make sound and picture work together and have this interactive stuff. So anyway, dove into that heavily, met a gentleman that night there who was the CEO of a company called Micrographics. Luckily, he was a Pink Floyd fan. So I was in the middle of, I'd already started playing with Pink Floyd at that time, and we were in the middle of our tour, and I was promoting this CD. We hit it off. Next thing I know, I got him to kind of invest in a project we started working on together, called Hot Links, which was basically mashing different music clips together to create music tracks. This is a long time back in the 90s, right? And he had a company, Micrographics was a graphics company, and wanted to add the sound package to it. So we worked on that. Long story short, we put on an event. We worked on putting on this event called the Grand Scientific Musical Theater. And that was a show we did at the Thomas and Mack Arena during Comdex, during the Micrographics Chili Cook-Off. And then we had 16,000 people in the arena. We had everybody, all the technology people there, from Bill Gates to, all the tech. It was like a big tech thing that was going on, because Micrographics was a tech company. We had the Nevada Symphony Orchestra. I had John Anderson from Yes. I had John Entwistle from The Who, Tower Power horns, Flo and Eddie, the Turtles. I had Mark and Brian, who were the radio announcers, running, and then I had Charles Fleischer, who was the voice of Roger Rabbit, running a head called this little 3D head, the first 3D head called Eduardo, which is the first talking thing where he could talk and the head would actually move. So early days. Now, this is all nothing anymore. We have all this tech and we can do it on a phone, but back in those days, and that's where I basically brought together Hollywood and Silicon Valley for the first time. And it was massive. I had all the Pink Floyd sound system and lights, and everything, and also Genesis. It was one of the most advanced technological events at that time because it was bringing together all the top tech people, tech engineers, Silicon Graphics machines. That Peter Max painting on real time on these machines. And so it was basically the start of the real sort of Hollywood and Silicon Valley coming together. And there was a term that was coined from that event called Sillywood, which was Silicon Valley and Hollywood coming together. So been really on the forefront of technology, seeing sound and picture. And from there, that was where we became Bob Ezrin, who produced all the Pink Floyd records and Kiss records, one of the top producers. He actually helped me out on that event, thank God, because I was in trouble. I needed help. And he came in, and after that, we said, hey, dude, let's start a company. So George Grace and myself and Bob started a company, and that's where Seventh Level was born. That's where we did the very first interactive musical cartoon that starred Howie Mandel. We took that company public. It was a NASDAQ company, and kind of rode that wave, and was my first really getting a handle on business at a whole different level. Obviously, when you're a public company, there's a lot of scrutiny. You've got rules, regulations, a lot going on. So I definitely learned a lot from that business and had incredible teams and engineers, and built on that. And since then, all my companies that I've done have all were all around technology, building technology. So I've built a lot of technology, a lot of stuff. I don't actually write code, but I do build requirements, put things, I've managed tech teams and all kinds of things, and building stuff through the years.
Outstanding, outstanding. And within all of that, we also get Think EXP, which also is a fascinating endeavor as well, in terms of
Oh,
what
that's
you
all about
milled,
immersive entertainment.
everything that's milled together. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
everything. And my background right now is I'm really focused on Web3, everything that deals with, NFTs, meme tokens, utility tokens, crypto, that whole world, because I believe the whole world's about to get eaten by tokens, and everything's about to change. This is the greatest time in history for the independent artist, independent business, to basically build the new relationships. We're moving from the creator economy into the relationship economy, and there's a lot of new things going on. It's all around what's happening in crypto and Web3. So that's where I spend most of my time now, is focusing on that. Travel a lot, speak at conferences about that topic, and yeah, it's kind of my
gotcha.
new world.
Gotcha. I feel like that's a great segue into our final segment, and just talking about the advice that you would give. Just as you had mentioned at the top, there are a robust, and I'll say robust with capital letters, a robust set of tools, right, that are at the disposal of creators, of artists these days. Whether we're talking about social media with Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whether we're talking about search engines with Yahoo, with Google, streaming, Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime Video. I can go on and on and on. You just mentioned NFTs. So as a result of this new landscape, I feel that, and this is me personally, I feel like more than ever, there is a requirement of, or a need from creators and artists to have a very diverse skill set, not only of being able to produce content, of producing content, whether you're making music, whether you're making content, right? Of editing that content to package it in a necessary way to make it feasible for your audience that is consuming it, of promoting it
Yep.
properly, so that way you're getting eyes in front of that said content, and of course converting it, which you have talked about with your space principle model.
And my
So
space principle, that's
yeah,
the business formula. Yeah.
so can you share
Yeah.
if what that advice would be these days? Because that advice, I'm sure, is far different today than what it was even 10 years ago,
Oh yeah,
of
big time.
what you would advise to creators, to artists, what have you.
Well, okay, I'll give you I'll give you the quick view. I mean, this is the thing.
Yes.
I actually taught this one year out at USC. The space principle is story. Space stands for story, plan, army, conversion, education / execution. The double E at the bottom. Everything is about the story. I don't care anybody out there, business, brand. First of all, we're all in the media business now. We're all in the entertainment media business. We have to create content. I don't care what business you're in. You're building content to put on the web, to put your business and show your stuff out there. So the formula for building your business, and I put this acronym in like space, what makes it interesting is I believe it is the ultimate formula. And once you figure this out, this is how you build your business. So it all starts with story. Story is the most important thing. You start there because here's the two things I'll tell everybody out there that I've learned. The two things that are so important. One is what you stand for is more important than what you sell, right? And the second one is classic never dies. So what I mean by what you stand for is more important, because here's the deal. In order to create a commercial movement, you're trying to sell something, you're trying to do something, you're trying to build something, trying to gather bodies. Because remember, whoever owns the audience today wins, which is the game. So if you're building your audience, that you want to, the story is what brings people together. So to create a commercial movement, I have to create a rally cry. I got to create something that people get excited about, that become around it. So the story is everything. Once you have that story of what you stand for, what it is, I can now use those keywords, those phrases, and I can growth hack against that. Now, what is growth hacking? Growth hacking is a combination of a programmer and marketing. So, because now as artists or as business people, we have something we didn't have years ago. We have access to the data, and the data is like gold to us, because that data can tell us how we need to operate, what we need to do, how we need to operate. So that data. So once you get that story right with those words, I can now go find my audience around that story. Who cares about my story, right? It's not I just throw it out there anymore and it just goes. No, I want to find the people that care about the problem I'm solving, that want to get behind it, and I can now put my information right in front of it. So the story is really critical. Everything starts with the story. From the story, you now start to build your plan. The P is for the plan. And for planning, I use my whole thing is using the lean canvas. I'm a big proponent of the lean startup principles. You can, anybody out there doesn't know what lean startup is, just Google it. You can start learning about lean startup, the lean startup principles. It's now a pretty big staple in Silicon Valley on how businesses are formed using the principles of lean startup. And there's a series of things there. Like one is, you know, don't run out of resources. So if you got $1,000, you don't spend those $1,000 till you've tested and validated your idea. You know that you got strong signals, so you test it. And once you have strong buy signals, then you know you have a good product market fit. Once you have that good product market fit, then you start throwing money at it, right? You know, so there's all these things that you do. So this lean canvas, you can get it at leanstack.com. I believe it's .com or .org. I can't remember offhand, but one of the lean stack. And it's a one-page business plan. There's 9 questions. You just got to answer those 9 questions. And what's great about the lean canvas, if you go to that place, you can get an interactive version of that, and kind of start building your plan. There's rules to it. Like the first time you fill it out, you got 20 minutes. You go through this process, you iterate, it'll teach you basically how to do this. But this 9 questions, it doesn't only tell you what you're going to do, it also tells you what you're not going to do. Because the idea of lean is you want to do the smallest thing you can possibly do that you can execute at the highest level, that's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. Right? Well, how do I move my business from where I am now to here? The easiest way, what's the simplest thing I can do? I worked it out and whittled it down. If I do this one thing, I can then execute, get me to there. So the planning is all about lean canvas and understanding lean principles. You can just go into Google and just Google up those things and learn. And there's a book called Running Lean. If you get that book, it's a fascinating book, because the book is using lean startup principles, but it uses the book as an example of how he took that book and made it #1 using lean startup principles. So it's a real incredible way to learn how this works, right? From the plan, we know we got our story, we're starting to build our plan, we're honing in on the thing that we're going to do, where we're going to put our energies. We've got X amount of money, we got that all in place. Next thing is your army. stay A for Army. And that's really influencers. I always teach everybody that the most important, for me at least, this is my strategy, is influence the influencers first. Find people that are influencers, your super fans, those people, convince them, because once you have an influencer talking about you, I don't want to be talking about me. I'd much rather have you talking about, oh, that guy's great, he's got a great business, everything else, right? So influencing influencers, because remember, those influencers are people that are connected to other people. And so when I talk about the Army, I always tell like artists, like, remember, who are your super fans? And what's a super? These are the guys that show up at your shows all the time. They're all around. And I ask them, do you know what they do? And most of the time they say, I have no idea. I don't really pay attention to what they do. They show up. I think, well, you never know. Those people could be very valuable, because like I've seen stuff where you might say, oh, my one of my super fans, he builds websites. And oh, another one, he's a videographer and he does, creates music videos.
That could
So
be your demo.
you
That could be
find
your
those,
demo.
yeah, right. And you find those people inside.
We lost Scott there for a moment. Give us a second, guys. Just lost him there for a moment. Give him a moment. But while that's happening, hope you guys are enjoying this conversation with Scott Page. I'm gonna give him a moment to pop back up with us, of him, commenting on the current state of the entertainment industry, and the advice that he has for said content creators, artists, anyone who is producing or making something. So I'm going to give Scott a moment to make his way back on. Believe we have him back.
Back.
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, you're
Oh
back.
man,
Lost you there for a moment, but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Continue.
I forgot where I was.
So yeah, you were
Oh
you were
yeah,
talking
space.
about,
Oh
yeah,
gosh.
we were talking about Scott, the just the nature of where the entertainment
Oh yeah,
industry
yeah.
is, and just that idea. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
space. Yeah, so the Army. So you identify those people who are your super fans, and then you can link from them out to other people. So my model is you go small. Find those small groups of people, those influencers, those fans. Get that started, and then you scale from there. So once you figure it out, you got your Army going, then you go to C in the space model: story, plan, Army, then conversion. Conversion is based upon conversion funnels. Again, funnels, conversion funnels are another thing that are very well understood. You can go Google conversion funnels, learn about those, because remember, the name of the game is, if you're not converting, it's a hobby. If it's a
Yeah.
business, if I always ask artists, is this a business or is this a hobby? If it's a business, you got to turn those fans into customers. Those customers have to pay money. You got to generate revenue, right? So that conversion funnels, we do that. And then the last thing is E, which is the education part, which is, if you don't, you got to go, everything I talked about, you got to go learn and get yourself educated on. And then the last
Absolutely.
thing is execution, because ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about executing and making it happen. So very important to get your execution together. And that's basically the space model.
Got it, got it. And just to close off, because I know this is a lot of times, I'm sure the next question that folks ask when they are in that process is, when do I have that flexibility to go left or to go right? Because as I talked about at the top, you carry a whole bunch of hats, but in order for you to be able to do that clearly, you have to be able to establish one thing first before you move on to the next thing. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming it has to be able to level up on its own before you can
Well,
carry on with the next venture.
yeah, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, am I a starter or am I a finisher?
Mm,
Very few people are good starters and finishers. There's ones. Me, I'm a starter. I get things started, but I'm not the guy to get the finishing part. So I always find, with all my ventures and everything, I always find a business partner that has the skills that complement my skills. because I can't do everything. So I always find an operations person, somebody that's great with spreadsheets, somebody that can put the numbers together, somebody that can handle the operations. I go get it started, I create the content, and then I hand it over to them and make it happen. So it's very important that you understand what your role is and what your skills are and what you're really good at. And not be trying to be things that other things, because that's when it gets kind of funky. And especially today, it's so much. There's marketing, there's social, there's keeping up with everything, there's the creation, I mean, it's insane. So building the right team, and that's where it goes back to my army. I might not have money, but I might have a set of super fans that have a set of skills that can help me out through this period, and I can give them something else. See, that's why I love NFTs and this whole part, because the NFTs create value. I could give you an NFT that could have value that I don't have to give you money, right? I could give you something that has value that may be on, and I'm basically investing in you with the ownership, because whatever an NFT, first of all, let me just explain, is really, it's a contract. It's a smart contract. An NFT is really just a contract connected to something that has the rights, rules, the permissions, all the things that you can do with that NFT if you own that NFT, access control. So NFTs can be used to help start businesses, because they're like something that will go, has value, that can be sold in a secondary market, that can be part of your business model as you're moving forward. So the key is really putting together a little team and figuring out ways that you can basically reward those people for doing things. I worked with Monty Python for many years, and we did the Python line, which was their first kind of website, and I talked them into giving all their media away for free. And they were like, I can't, this is our jewels, give it away for free. I said, yeah, what we want is people to build on top of it, get it out there. So we put a thing on there that said, please steal my media. First thing I did was I built my super fan army. I went out and found myself 10 of the top Python fanatics, worked out a deal with them to give them posters signed by the Pythons, got them to have a conversation with Eric Idle, all those things I did. And they actually created thousands and thousands of pieces of content for a marketing campaign we did. So there's a way to bring your super fan army into your business, reward them in different ways, and NFTs. And again, learn about that. That will be helpful. It's the greatest new thing to come along for artists and businesses ever. They just misunderstood. People don't understand what they are. But we're moving into a world where everything is going to get tokenized. Everything. I don't care what business you're in. I don't care. And the greatest transfer of wealth will happen because of NFTs. Because for the first time, you could have a QR code on a building. I could walk up to that building, go get that QR code. Does you want to buy a portion of that building for $10,000? Buy. Bought it. I just own that. I own a piece of that building. That fast, that easy, that quick. So tokenization is going to tokenize everything, transfers power, wealth to people. And so we're going through that. So the whole idea is now, from an artist point of view, is to get yourself educated, learn where it's going. AI is coming on. I personally hate AI for what it is, but I have an AI project. I'm deep in AI. It scares me to death, to be truthful. I don't really like it, but you have to be in it. In order to get out of the matrix, you got to be in the matrix. You got
You
to
have to know
understand
it.
how things work, right? So
Yeah.
that's really important. So that's the model. For artists and everybody, just get out there, start learning. I'm going to give you to learn about crypto. If you don't understand crypto and you don't understand NFTs, you don't understand where it's going. I give you my favorite teacher in this is a girl by the name of Crypto Casey. Crypto Casey, just Google her on YouTube or wherever, you'll find her. She has one of her posts is a post called Bitcoin for Beginners. I recommend it highly because there's links inside of that. She will start teaching you, but everybody out there, I can't stress enough. You want to learn and understand how to bring tokenized assets, crypto, and all that into your business or whatever you're doing. I don't care if you're going to be just selling online or building your audience. And the other thing is we're moving from the creator economy into the relationship economy. And the name of the game is to go small. Don't go big. This isn't about broadcasting anymore. It's about building a hive. If you want to survive, you have to build a hive. Now, that means you got to build that people, bringing those like-minded people together. So start small and then start to grow. There's a thing called 1,000 True Fans out there. It was put out by Kevin Kelly from Wired magazine years ago. And a true fan is somebody that will spend $100 a year on you. It's basically $7.50 a month. Once I have 1,000 people that will pay me $100 a year, there's my first $100,000 in revenue. There's only 1,000 people. You're not talking about millions of people. You're not talking anything. Now, one last thing, and I'll leave this, is that I went to a meetup, an NFT meetup, which I recommend people to go to these meetups. You can talk with other creators, people in the space. But I went, and this girl was 19 years old. She gets up and she starts to talk. She was asked to speak. And she goes, hey, I'm 19 years old. I'm a photographer. I love photography. I get up every day. I shoot photography. I'm going to be the greatest photographer ever. I got into NFT, she said, 9 months ago. And I'm so excited because I now live 100% off my NFTs. I get up every day. I shoot videos. I shoot photos and stuff. NFTs. I actually pay my house rent. I pay my car payment. I live 100% off my NFTs. And then she said, also, I carved a portion of my NFTs off to my local community center, and I'd already given them 2.5 ETH, and 2.5 ETH was the equivalent to $10,000. So how many 19-year-old girls that nobody knows shooting photography is actually giving $10,000 to their community center and living 100% off of their art? And that community was less than 100 people. So this is a major game-changing time. Get out there, start learn about tokenomics, start learning about Web3. It's a game changer. I don't care what business you're in. You want to jump on this wave now. You want to understand crypto. You want to get in the game. You want to learn about it. I don't give normal advice. This is not security advice, but everybody should own a little bit of Bitcoin, just dollar cost average into that as a part of your little portfolio, because that has one of the greatest chances to be one of the greatest wealth creators of all time. There's a lot going on. The government now is very pro crypto. Things are happening. So this is that moment in time where we, the people, get to own the network and actually make out with it. So everybody just take a little bit, and especially if you have children, and you want to put some money away for them, I really suggest taking a look at putting a little bit of Bitcoin away. Because if Michael Saylor's right, he says right now, for every Bitcoin you don't own at $100,000 per coin, you're going to lose $13 million in the next 20 years. So if you got a child, put a little bit, just own a little at 0.01 of a Bitcoin. That could be life changing for them. So anyway, that's my crypto rant out to everybody, and there you go.
All right, awesome. Well, Scott, thank you so much for carving out some time this morning for you, this afternoon for us here on the East Coast. Before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Yeah, my socials, it's IAM Scott Page. So at IAM Scott Page. You can find me on all the socials. Same thing. Yeah, hit me up, DM me. I talk to people, so it's good. Let's keep this party rolling.
Absolutely. So again, I want to thank Scott Page for hopping on today's show, talking about his body of work, not only in music, but in tech as well. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X, and of course, Brandon Choi _ENT on IG. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and